Yesterday we are talking about this Pamada, Appamada. Appamada, and it is heedfulness or diligence, and Pamada as heedlessness or negligence. When we talk about Appamada, we must also talk about Pamada in order to understand Appamada better. As much as there are three types of Pamada, there are also three types of Appamada, namely gross, medium, and refined. When one is indulging in immoral deeds, usually does, then one is said to be negligent or heedless in a gross way. And we also talk about the 10 immoral deeds, comprising of 3 physical immoral deeds, 4 verbal immoral deeds, and 3 mental immoral deeds, which leads to wrongdoing by body, speech, and mind. And if one indulges in one of these 10 immoral deeds, with mind indulging in leaving the mind uncontrolled, giving the mind free license, so to speak, without any intellectual reasoning as to its defects, and not knowing how to control it, and not only indulging in it, but continuing to indulge in them, or in it, or in them, such is tantamount to gross type of Pamada, heedlessness or negligence. Such is the way those immoral people usually does follow or pursue. The opposite of that is Appamada, heedfulness or diligence, abstaining from these immoral deeds, usually does, knowing that they are despicable, they are undesirable. So are the consequences of these immoral deeds, which are also considered as despicable or undesirable. Seeing the flaws of both the action and results. Such kind of fear, shame and fear, or detesting and fear, is known in Pali as hiri otapa, moral shame, moral fear. This is when one possesses these two mental states, wholesome mental states, moral shame and moral fear, then one will abstain from these dukkha immoral deeds, so as not to indulge in them, controlling one's own world so that one's own little world is not affected, with mindfulness and possessing these two wholesome mental states, namely hiri otapa, moral shame, moral fear, abstaining from unwholesome deeds. Such is Appamada, heedfulness or diligence, as we discussed yesterday. Then comes the medium type of Pamada, heedlessness or negligence, namely indulging in sense desires, sense of pleasures, without the practice of restraint of one's faculties. Having this philosophy that being reborn as a human being is to enjoy sense of pleasures. Might as well make the best use of a life with the enjoyment of sense of pleasures. Enjoying pleasant objects, such as pleasurable visible object, pleasurable sound, and so on. Leaving the mind uncontrolled, without mindfulness, and continuing to indulge in them. Such is the medium type of Pamada, negligence or heedlessness. It is all right if one is content with one's own sense object. That means a sense object which belongs to you. But if you indulge in the enjoyment of sense pleasures which don't belong to you, then that will lead to immoral deeds. So seeing the flaws of these sense pleasures which don't belong to you especially. If you're content with your own sense of pleasures or sense objects, knowing the flaws of these sense desires, sense pleasures, practicing the restraint of faculties with mindfulness, such is the medium type of heedfulness or diligence, Appamada. And actually, there are many things to talk about, because much has been given about these things in the literatures. Not knowing how to practice the restraint as regards the sense objects, leaving the mind uncontrolled, without any restraint, and one continues to indulge in them, one is bound to realize, bound to get undesirable flaws. And this need not be elaborated, because everybody knows. For instance, if psychiatric drugs or intoxicants are included, and indulging in them is included in this precept, Kamesut Mishachara, and sensual misconduct, leaving the mind uncontrolled, and indulging in abnormal relationship, so that in a sexual relationship, so that one is contracted with diseases which are incurable. One is enjoying pleasure only for a short time, but one is suffering throughout one's life, especially family members. If one indulges in such things, one is bound to affect one's own children. On the other hand, if one practices the restraint of these things, not indulging in intoxicants, and even if one has indulged in them, one tries to save oneself from such misconduct, and also practice the restraint of one's faculties in other sense desires, abstaining from sense objects as much as possible, then one's health and other benefits, other advantages will not be affected. So, indulging in them is a medium type of Pamada, heedlessness or negligence, and abstaining from such things is the medium type of Appamada, heedfulness or diligence, leading to the benefit or advantages of such abstention. As regards the third kind of Pamada, namely the refined or very subtle type of Pamada, occurs in the practice of high-level discipline of the way of mindfulness, which the yogis are doing in order to cultivate wholesome deeds. If one is not respectful in listening to the correct method or guidance, and even one undertakes a practice one is not doing respectfully or continuously, then it will be tantamount to becoming negligent in a very subtle or refined way. As for monks, for instance, when they are receiving dana, offerings, they are not to receive these offerings in a half-hearted manner, as though they are not wanting these things, in which case the offerer it is tantamount to having no respect towards the offerer and also the offerings. So one should not do that. And when they are taking the food or using the requisites offered, they are not to do it like a sick person, half-heartedly, as though they are not willing to enjoy it, then they should not do it. If one is doing also similarly, this is very important, and similarly in the case of the practicing yogis, when they are noting main objects, beginning with rising and falling of the abdomen, and other objects as they rise, if they are not, first of all, if they are not following the guidance of correct method of practice, and even if they seem to listen, they are half-hearted, and when they are undertaking a practice also, they are not doing respectfully and continuously, such is tantamount to being heedless or negligent in a very subtle way. Of course, here the gross or medium forms of Pamada, negligence, are not involved, namely indulging in immoral deeds, dukkhitas, and indulging in sense desires, sense pleasures, kamagunas. So, if one is not cultivating a meditative mind properly, respectfully, carefully, not listening properly, wholeheartedly to the method of practice given, and when one is practicing also, one is practicing like a sick person, not practicing respectfully or continuously, then one is becoming negligent in a subtle way, or heedless in a subtle way. And the reverse of that is Appamada, heedfulness or diligence, following the valuable guidance respectfully, carefully, and when one is undertaking the practice, one is doing it respectfully, carefully, noting even minute details, not to miss them, so that the mindfulness is continuous, the preceding mindfulness is continuous with succeeding mindfulness, and the preceding concentration is continuous with the succeeding concentration. And in this way, if one is practicing like this, respectfully, continuously, then one is said to be diligent or heedful, Appamada, in a subtle way. And also, one must practice not to be discontinuous, one must be continuous, without gap, with vigilance and diligence. If one is not doing like that, then one is leaving gaps, allowing the impurities to enter one's stream of consciousness through the gap. Even if one is not allowing the worst or gross forms of defilements, if one is not noting and knowing the true nature of the object which is missed, then one will become deluded. There will be no clarity of knowledge, and one will not see things clearly. There will be delusion. One will become deluded and unclear. Such kind of experience is tantamount to having not detesting, not fearing the loss of mindfulness or loss of the objects to be noted. You missed the objects. You are not ashamed of it. You are not fearing it. That is ahirika anatapa. Lack of moral fear, lack of moral shame, lack of moral fear. If you are not noting with vigilance and wakefulness and activity, then only when you are able to activate mindfulness will you be able to deepen your concentration. Now you are not noting it continuously, respectfully. So what happens? The mind is not falling on the object, is not anchoring on the object of to be noted, so that the mind is said to be distracted. There is distraction of the mind, restlessness of the mind, known as uddhacca, restlessness of mind. And the mind is said to be flown away or cast away from the object to be noted. And at which time, at least, if you are missing these objects, at least these four unwholesome mental states are bound to occur, namely delusion, lack of moral shame, lack of moral fear, and restlessness. And also, when it comes to pleasurable object, which can cause you to have desire, there will be greed about desirable object, and anger or hatred or ill will about undesirable things or objects. And also, as regards things which may cause you pride, then you will be overcome by pride, mana, and so are envy and avarice. All these things are bound to flow into the gaps that you have caused because of the lack of mindfulness, because you have missed the mindfulness, because you have lost the objects. That's why if you are not noting, resting sometimes, because you are resting sometimes because you are not noting or resting from mindfulness. Maybe your mind is resting, but the kilesas, the defilements are not resting. They are very active every second, every moment of the time. They will not rest, although you rest. So if you rest, they will come in and occupy your mind. So you should be energetic and mindful instead, and practice mindfulness not to miss every moment, second of the time, so as not to allow these impurities to arise in the stream of consciousness. Then only it will be all right in your practice. That's why Buddha has said that eka rekho hoti is one and only one way of guarding your mind, and how to live with protection of the mind. And the Buddha answered that ida bhikkhu bhikkhu sutarekhena chittasa samana vato hoti. In this dispensation, monks or yogis, who are also called bhikkhus, should have a mind guarded by mindfulness. That is tantamount to saying you guard your mind with vigilant mindfulness of every arising, every sense impression, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, every movement of the body, rising, falling, lifting, moving, gazing, and even to the extent of closing and opening of your eyes. Such is eka rekha, one way of protection, and one should live with one means of protection, namely mindfulness. That means one should be able to note continuously, so as not to allow these gaps, not to create gaps to allow kilesas, defilements to rise in the stream of consciousness, because your mind is protected. If your mind is protected, you are bound to be secure and free from bondage, which will lead to peace of mind, and which is the cause for happiness. Only when the yogi is practicing without stopping, then only the practice will be continuous. Then only one will be able to build up this power of mindfulness. If one is stopping and going like that, in the text is given this example, analogy of chameleon. When this animal sees its food, it would rush towards it, but it won't go straight away continuously. Instead, it will stop on the way 2 or 3 times at least, and gaze, look here and there, and then continue to run towards the food. So, when the yogis are behaving like this, sometimes practicing, at other times stopping and gazing, or thinking, imagining, then they are given as they are very much like these chameleon yogis, or they are called chameleon yogis. So one should not behave like this. Instead, one should be able to practice continuously. Then only one will be able to build up one's power of mindfulness. Otherwise, if one is stopping, not noting the objects as they arise, then one will have lost one's momentum, and one will have to start all over again. One had to build up new momentum in order to activate one's mindfulness. So at this point, the text has given such example as chameleon And the yogis, if they are practicing like this, they are like a chameleon and they should not behave like this. And if they are behaving like this, then they are said to be negligent or heedless in a very subtle or refined way. And also, if they are doing like this, they will also be committing the gross or medium form of negligence or heedlessness, because sense desires will come in and so on. So one should be able to do it continuously and note every arising object. If they are doing like this, then they are said to be heedful and diligent in a very subtle and refined way. So in this high level discipline of way of mindfulness, there's no time to lose. Out of 24 hours available to you, you practice except the time when you are fast asleep in all the 4 postures. And such are the behavior of dedicated yogis. Of course, after meal or lunch, you may have a few minutes of nap, 10 or 15 minutes. For the rest of the time, you are supposed to practice mindfulness in all the 4 postures without leaving any gap. This expression, bhavita bhavu subhavitani, cultivated and cultivated well. That means that one has got to do it fully, without resting, without any gap, allowing any gap. Example here again is when your engine of your motor vehicle is running, it will be charging the battery at the same time. If the engine stops, then the battery will not be charged. And if the battery is left like that, then the battery, the energy will go down in your battery, and you have to charge again. So in ordinary life, in your daily life, you may have some time to rest. But in this case of the practice of mindfulness, you are not to rest, but to note continuously, activating mindfulness, so as not to allow these defilements to arise in the stream of consciousness. With Appamada, heedfulness or diligence, one is said to be protecting one's behaviors, physical, verbal, mental, from all aspects. And as much as one is doing that, one's behaviors will become pure, unblemished, and gentle. If one is protecting like this, based on Appamada, just imagine how you become satisfied with your own practice. There will be no wrongdoing in all your behaviors. Instead, they will become pure, gentle, and amiable, purified. So when you discover your situation like this, then you become satisfied, and with the thought of transformation, that your life is transformed, that you have experienced some sort of transformation in your life, so that you come to acceptance that this practice is correct in purifying your behaviors. You come to acceptance. So too in the practice of the restraint of sense desires, sense pleasures, you can verify your practice that this kind of restraint is beneficial, so that you come to a conclusion and acceptance that this practice is correct, the restraint is good. You come to acceptance, by which you become encouraged, inspired with your practice. And this, instead of the mind in low spirits, your mind will be in high spirits, leading to heroic courage. Courage in order to abstain from what should be abstained, courage to observe what should be observed. And such are the basis of the sharpening of controlling faculties. So if you are mindful, then you are said to be heedful, diligent, Appamada. As much as your mindfulness is good, your concentration also will deepen, will intensify, If there is no mindfulness, then there will be no concentration. Then if there is no concentration, you will not be able to see things in their true nature. There will be only delusion and ignorance, not knowing the truth, knowing in the wrong way. On the other hand, if your mindfulness is strong, leading to deepened concentration, your vision will become very clear. Such are the benefits. So as much as you practice in this way, these controlling faculties will become developed. That is, the controlling faculty of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration and wisdom will grow, enhance and develop, which you can verify with your own practical experience. If you are able to do it diligently, with vigilance, this in the practice of Satipatthana, this is the refined or subtle form of Appamada, heedfulness. And if you are not doing it with strong zeal, then it will be the subtle form of negligence or heedlessness. On the other hand, if you have this strong zeal to realize the benefit of Satipatthana, this will be your refined form of heedfulness or diligence. So, throughout your life, you practice so that you won't find any difficulties. Instead, you only experience success, just like fighting a battle. In the battle, if the soldier is not careful, then he or she will be killed by the enemy. So too, with the practice of Satipatthana, one should behave like fighting a battle in the front line. One should be always mindful, which is mindfulness. One should regard mindfulness as the most important responsibility for oneself to survive. Such is the refined form of heedfulness. And then it's just like taking medicines. If you're sick and do not take medicines regularly, and you're not abstaining from what should be abstained as prescribed or directed by the physician, then you become a chronic patient. You will not be cured of the disease. So too with the yogis. If the yogis are not practicing regularly, for them the Satipatthana medicine will not be effective in overcoming the difficulties. So this will be a refined form of heedlessness or negligence. On the other hand, if you are doing progressively, noting continuously without stopping, then it will be for your progress. And such practice of mindfulness continuously is Appamada, heedfulness in a refined form. Now some would consider that such practice of mindfulness in continuous manner is tantamount to being very strict. And in fact, Satipatthana mindfulness is not making you become strict. It is not restricting you. It is only the kilesa, defilements and duties which are restricting you, so you become strict. If you are not mindful, then you become a victim to bondage by defilements or kilesa bondage, such as there will be likes and dislikes about desirable, undesirable objects. When you encounter desirable or pleasurable, attractive objects, there will be greed. You become greedy about it. And if you encounter undesirable, unpleasant objects or things, then you'll be overcome by ill will or anger. And so on. And also, there will be delusion for objects which can cause delusion, and pride and conceit for objects which can cause pride and conceit. So that these defilements, impurities, are restricting you, so that you are bound, you are bound by them, so that you are restricted, which has been with you throughout your lifetimes, which you are experiencing throughout your lifetimes. So, the Satipatthana is to free you from this bondage. And by being mindful, practicing mindfulness, you are relieved from this bondage. So, this is extremely desirable. And you are said to be, in a way, you are pressed by these bondage, the kilesa bondage. So your spirits are very low, you are in low spirits, you are demoralized, dispirited, whereas the practice of Satipatthana is a means of uplifting your spirit, your morale, so that your behaviors will become purified. And not only that, you'll be able, these Satipatthana, the practice of Satipatthana is a kind of remedy to treat or to overcome social problems. Of course, some yogis think that this is very strict and Satipatthana is binding them, and they become disappointed and demoralized, so that some left the retreat. The hour is up, we stop here. The hour is up, we stop here.